You're watching Good Morning Nigeria on the network service of the Nigerian Television Authority. Now, to kickstart our conversation, which is on how to stabilize the Naira, let's listen to this background report put together by Oyemi Ajayi.
The progressive depreciation of the Nigerian currency, the Naira, has become a source of concern to citizens. A dollar goes for as high as 710 Naira, with some economists saying the rate might still go higher. Analysts attribute the trend to scarcity of the dollar and increased demand by customers, especially at the parallel markets. Some have said the downturn of the economy is being reflected in the foreign exchange market, especially as demand outweighs supply. Others have highlighted broader economic problems, such as the country's high appetite for imports, lack of a robust and encompassing trade policy, amongst other militating factors. Earlier, the Central Bank of Nigeria has banned the sale of forex to the Bureau de change operators with the hope of strengthening the Naira. The Apex Bank also suspended the applications for and issuance of new licenses for BDC's operations in the country. It has accused the BDCs to have become a conduit for illicit forex flows and graft, but despite all these measures, the Naira has slipped to an all-time low of 710 Naira per dollar when compared to 505 Naira per dollar as at the time the ban of forex was imposed. As it is, the effect of the depreciating Naira is being felt by everyone, especially the small and medium-scale businesses, as they will have to spend more money to buy goods and services from other countries. This can result to inflation, low patronage of goods and services, and possible collapse of some SMEs. At the moment, Nigeria is not the only country battling with the currency destabilization, as the Indian rupee, Japanese yen, euro, Swiss franc, British pounds have also depreciated. As a way out, some have called for a revival of the productive sectors of the economy to achieve higher capacity utilization and productivity and competitive export of manufactured products. There is also advocacy for government encouragement of local refining of petroleum products, both domestic consumption and export, as well as strong and effective surveillance of the forex market by the Monetary Authority to check round-tripping of forex from commercial banks to the parallel markets. Now, how can the Naira be strengthened again and made stable in the forex market? Guests on the program will provide insights shortly.
Thank you very much, Oyemi Ajayi, for that background. With us in the studios and elsewhere from our network centers, there are regular guests on Good Morning Nigeria. Here in Abuja, Professor Uche Owaleke, who is President Association of Capital Market Academics and also Professor of Capital Market at Nasarawa State University in Kefi. Professor Owaleke, glad to have you this morning.
Thank you very much, Kinsley.
Okay.
Good morning, Nigerian.
From our Benin Network Center, we'll be joined by Professor Mike Obadan. Professor Mike Obadan is a member of the Central Bank of Nigeria Monetary Policy Committee. Professor Obadan, we're glad to have you this morning.
My pleasure to be with you. Good morning, Nigeria. All right, and from our Lagos studio, we have Shoaib Idris, a financial expert, and the MD and CEO of Timeline Consults Limited. We're also hoping to have another guest from there. But for now, Shoaib, good morning and welcome to the program.
Good morning, Kirian. Good morning, Nigerians. And thank
wherever may be joining us, he's the president of Association of the Bureau de change operators of Nigeria. As a matter of fact, his presence will be very central to this conversation, Kinsley.
That's right. We hope he's able to make it. We understand that there's quite some traffic around our location, Victoria Island in Lagos. So once Mini Gwadabe gets into the studios, we'll of course bring him into the conversation. Let's begin by going over to our Benin Network Center and getting Professor Mike Obadan. Professor Mike Obadan, if you can hear us on All right, so it's on the right side of your screen. Professor Michael Bader, what's happening to our Naira?
Well, thank you very much, Kingsley. What is happening to the Nigerian Naira is an unfortunate development in that in the recent 1 or 2 months, particularly since the politicians conducted the primaries, for the elections next year, the Naira has taken a beating, strong beating, particularly in the parallel of black foreign exchange market. And but then the weakness of the Nigerian Naira is not just a recent development. It commenced since the economy started experiencing very serious negative external shocks in 2016, which culminated in the first recession, and then following the strong policies of the monetary authority and also the fiscal authority, the Naira started to gain some strength. But again, the shock of COVID-19 and the attendant economic recession, further weakened the Naira. But the value of the Naira did not fall to the extent to which it has now. What has happened now is that there is a very strong destabilizing speculation in the parallel foreign exchange market. Yes, there have always been speculators in the parallel market or foreign exchange market generally, but the dimension it has taken now is very worrisome, in the sense that apart from the normal traders, foreign exchange traders who speculate in the foreign exchange market, the tragedy is that respectable Nigerians have joined in destabilizing speculation. It appears that at this point in time, patriotism, love for the country has taken a very strong flight. And you then find that otherwise respectable people are holding the Naira. During the primaries, I was a bit optimistic that the observed depreciation of the Naira to about 600 or a little above, to the dollar was going to be transient because of the nature of transactions at that point in time, that politicians were reported to have bought up the foreign exchange in the parallel market and perhaps even also added the one they already have and used to conduct the elections. So my optimism was that, yes, once the primaries ended, that the recipients of the dollars, the delegates, and maybe other participants in the political process will start offloading, the Naira in the parallel market again. And that would have brought down the exchange rate and strengthened it even in the parallel market. But it appears that that one has not happened. It appears that, like I said, respectable people have also joined, and they are engaging in what we call destabilizing speculation, in the sense that when prices, the exchange rate is rising, rather than put money in the foreign exchange market, sell foreign exchange so as to bring a semblance of stability, they further buy, therefore pushing up the exchange rate. They buy and hoard, keep, and that is what is causing the most recent travail of the Naira in the foreign exchange market. Of course, still, like I said, there have been cumulative developments emanating from largely external shocks, which have reduced the quantum of foreign exchange earned in the country and reduced export of goods and services, and also adversely affected capital inflows and promoted capital flight. And the stock of reserves, had not improved, but as at this point in time, it's still fairly stable.
Professor Baden, let's pause you a little bit. We are going to return to you in the course of the program, because you have raised a very important point that need to be further dissected. But for now, let's get Professor Uche Waleke's view of what actually made the Naira to be falling like pack of cards, I'd say in some quarters. What is really happening? The analysis given by Professor Baden is well taken. What are all those other, indicators, what had led to the current situation of the Naira?
Yeah, thank you, Kieran. Well, if you like, legacy factors. But before then, let me also say that this trend that we have now, depreciation of the Naira is a worrisome development. Worrisome in the sense that it is one event, if you call it event, that is compounding the inflation, situation. It is also something that is compounding the government's ability to service external debt, because the more the Naira depreciates in relative terms, cost of debt service, exacerbates. And you also find that the widening parallel market premium is further encouraging round tripping. So that's why I said is indeed a worrisome development. But earlier I talked about legacy factors. These are issues that have been with us for quite some time, and that is why I think that the solution really is won't come as a quick fix. There are no quick fixes. What are these legacy issues? Remember that in the 80s, for example, the Naira is said to be, to have exchanged for, or rather was at par with the dollar. At that time, we had one Naira to $1. Okay, but what has happened now? We have seen, a progressive depreciation over time, caused by factors such as increase in demand for dollar. And as a matter of fact, the Naira is suffering from a simultaneous effect of, one, the increase, the surge in the demand for dollar. Recall that in 1980, let us even take the issue of education, for example. I was looking at a statistics, data by the United Nations Institute for Statistics. And that document said that in the 80s, in 1998 rather, the number of Nigerians that were studying abroad, okay, they were just about 15,000. As of 2019, that number has surged to close to 100,000. So that tells you that we spend more now on foreign education. As a matter of fact, between 2010 and 2020, Nigeria has spent about $30 billion, even using CBN data, on foreign education alone. Now, you take healthcare, for example. We also spend as much as $1 billion on healthcare. So over a 10-year period, you have $10 billion. So between 2010 and 2020, it means we have spent as much as $40 billion on education and health alone. And that's the equivalent of our current external reserves, as we speak. Now, you come to imports. In 1980, again from the CBN data, import bill was just $16 billion. As of 2019, import bill has jumped, up to $55 billion. As a matter of fact, at one point in 2014, it was over $64 billion. It was because of some of the measures the central bank introduced, to curtail demand that we even had it, we're even having the reduction. So the point I'm making is that over time we have had this increased demand. So with respect to invisibles, yes, with respect to imports, and you will also agree with me that at some point in this country, about 75% of the cars driven here were assembled here. We had Volkswagen and we had Peugeot in Kaduna. Today, 99% of the cars we drive here are imported. The clothes too we wear. We used to have textile companies. Today, where are they? That's why I say legacy issues. The productive base of the economy is shallow, and until that is sorted out, we will continue to have this depreciation. That's why I said, we don't have any quick fixes, to this challenge that we have. I also, if you permit me, let me also say this, that the exchange rate, okay, again, is a function of the regime that any central bank is adopting. And there are three main types of exchange rate regimes. Okay, you have the fixed exchange rate regime, when you peg it to the dollar. Now, for that to happen, for that to be successful, you must have sufficient reserves. And that's why countries like Saudi Arabia, Qatar, and UAE, are using fixed exchange regime because they have sufficient reserves. Saudi Arabia, for example, has, foreign reserves in close to $500 billion. The other one is flexible or floating exchange rate regime. Okay, where you allow market forces to determine the value of the Naira. Because I've had suggestions, people are saying we should float the Naira. Now, for that to be successful, your rate of inflation, your long-term rate of inflation must be very low, okay, relative to the rate of inflation of the US, since you're using the dollar. So again, that is not the case we have in Nigeria. Today, you find, according to studies, that the differential in terms of inflation rate between Nigeria and the US over a long period of time is about 10%. And then you also have the other one, which they call the pegged exchange system, okay, where you peg it to a band, and that's why some people call it crawling peg. So the point I'm making is that the regimes that the central bank has been adopting over time, in my view, have been dictated by the economic circumstance, our own peculiar circumstance. When I said twin problems of inadequate supply of forex, okay, I will talk about supply later, and then the fact that we have this surge in demand.
Okay, Professor Waleke, thank you very much. Let's go over now to our Lagos Network Center. The other guest we were expecting has already joined Shuaibu Idris. Well, all right. So let's go back to our Lagos Network Center. Shuaibu Idris, who's a regular on Good Morning Nigeria, a financial expert and a former banker, is there in the studios. On the screen there, he's to the right. And to the left of the screen, wearing a sky blue outfit, is Dr. Aminu Gwadabe, President Association of Bureau de Change Operators of Nigeria. We've had him from time to time on Good Morning Nigeria. Gentlemen, if your audio is right, let's bring you both into the conversation right away. I don't know how much of the comments made by Professors Mike Obadan and Uche Waleke that Dr. Gwadabe was able to pick up before we introduced him just right now. But let's bring in first Shuaibu Idris, so that if Gwadabe gets pinned to the wall, he will know how to respond. Shuaibu Idris, look, it just helps us understand what's happening. We talked about speculative attacks on the Naira, as it were. Some of us have also raised the concerns about round tripping. And then Professor Waleke says, look at what we are spending on education, look at what we are spending on health. How many Nigerians are spending money on foreign education? How many Nigerians are spending money on health tourism? And by the way, some of these financial outlays not sourced through the central bank, which is to say the IRA window. Now the IRA window is about 400 something to the dollar, and right now the parallel market rate, we're looking at 700 something. From your experience, just what's going on?
Thank you once again, Kingsley, for having me. First and foremost, I think we need to have some foundation even before we start. Gentlemen in the panel, is it even fair to even continue these discussions? We have had series of this type of conversations discussing what we need to do in order to save our currency. Are those in authority listening? Kingsley and Kirian and other discussants, particularly our elder Professor Mike Obadan, will bear me witness that in this forum we have had this type of conversation, and indeed the little knowledge we have, we shared. Are those in authority listening? Or were we just talking to the deep and dumb? Number two, following closely to that, is Nigerians in general are an extremely difficult lot of people. Almost everything is thrown to the government. Everyone says government is doing this, government is not doing that. Meanwhile, no one looks at what am I supposed to do. Today, we have the National Assembly calling the governor of Central Bank to come and address them about this policy. If I were Godwin Emefiele, when I go there, I will ask them, how many of you is using from their household to their body, to their cars, to their offices, how many are using any made in Nigeria item? Everybody is calling for the head of Goodluck Jonah, what is his name, Godwin Emefiele. He has failed. But is he the problem? Now, with that foundation, let me take a dive into the issues. I am glad to have not, what Professor Mike Obadan and Professor Uche has said in terms of legacy issue history. First and foremost, we have had a terrible industrial policy from 1970 till date. Import substitution, and we skewed our economy in such a way and manner that close to about 95% of raw materials that our factories need are supposed to be imported. How do you have an import-dependent economy not going to have challenges of foreign exchange? We are not exporting processed goods. Even the crude oil we have been blessed by God, we export it and import petroleum products. How else do you want to see any other paradox other than this kind of situation that Nigeria has found itself? And it's holistically, and all of us are guilty of this offense. Is it government? Is it we Nigerians? Is it those in authority? I mean, civil servant? Everyone has a share of the blame, and we then point one finger, meanwhile the rest of the fingers are pointing at us. You look at the challenge of exchange rate. Basically, I will say there are two factors: external and internal. Professor Mike Obadan has dimensioned some of them. Externally, Nigeria is not an island, it's playing in the international economic arena. Therefore, what happens in United Kingdom, what happens in US, what happens in Latin America or Asia, directly or indirectly affects Nigeria. Internally, we have had series of actions by government and by central banks that have contributed enormously to this depreciation. Is it the issue of speculation? Is it the issue of currency predators? I don't think we should narrow it to Nigerians wanting to buy dollars. Why are Nigerians running to safety to buy dollars? Number one, markets are driven by sentiment. Markets are driven by emotions. Mostly, fundamentals in market seldom, play a role in pricing. Emotions and thought process of traders direct the activities of players. Now, when you take an action that makes market players to have a trust deficit in you and in your system, then what have you, been able to achieve? You have exacerbated the issues. We have challenges in producing crude oil. This is a country that was producing 2.2 million barrels per day. We went down to 950 barrels per day. Now, our major source of foreign exchange, we couldn't even sustain investment in the production of crude oil. I mean, how else do we want to run a system? Now, the non-oil export, the last time I checked, last year's revenue or dollars we were able to generate has dwindled to close to about 40%, largely because of insecurity. Bandits are challenging people from mining. Bandits are challenging people from producing cocoa or maize or sorghum or soya beans that we will be able to export, or ginger that we are exporting. And we are not able to address or give these farmers the necessary security and protection to be able to produce these goods that could be exported to earn foreign exchange. And to worsen the situation, like Professor Odaleke has said, the demand is increasing and will continue to increase. Population, we are adding an average of 5 million children per annum, and therefore
All right. We've just lost the audio, there through to Lagos. I hope our engineers are doing something to rectify the situation. For now, we are back to the studio here in Abuja. All right. Let's return to Professor Baden once more. Now that we've lost contact with our Lagos audio line. Professor Baden, you listened to the last speaker, that's Shuaibu Idris, and he made mention of poor or rather terrible industrial policy that we have in this country. Yes, you have given us an analysis of what may have caused the plummeting of the Naira in terms of its value. But there are very concrete issues that he mentioned. Terrible industrial policy. This is a country where people spend dollars on daily basis, even government officials, even school fees are sometimes paid in dollars. So the nation has been dollarized. And why has it been allowed to last this long? Because of course the chase for the dollar, the demand is now higher than the supply, and is affecting our own local currency. There are certain policies, that may have been put in place that were not active. Now, in terms of the current situation that we find ourselves, some have also said that the CBN attempts to control the value of the Naira with the continuous exclusion of the BDCs will only lead to further depreciation of the Naira. Do you agree to that? If not, what should be the right course?
Well, thank you very much, Kirian. Let me say that I fully subscribe to the very important points advanced by Mr. Shuaibu Idris. And the issue of industrial policy that he talked about, yes, it's a failure. It's a failure in the sense that as of today, you find that most industrial factories are comatose. A good number of them have closed. Some have relocated to neighboring countries. And then the industrial goods that we are supposed to be producing in the country, we import all of them. We import raw materials. We import intermediate goods. All these put pressure on the stock of foreign exchange available. And so the industrial policy has not been implemented There are series of industrial plans, master plans, and so on, but they have not been effectively implemented to stem the tide of deindustrialization in Nigeria. That is the phenomenon that has occurred as a result of the failure of industrial policy, which Mr. Shuaibu Idris, mentioned. The question you asked is whether, the issue of suspension or banning of sale of official foreign exchange, to the bureau de change, would have been a factor. And I will say no, for the simple reason that whatever foreign exchange that was allocated to bureau de change before for small foreign exchange transactions, personal travel allowance, basic travel allowance, and others, that volume of foreign exchange went directly and still go directly to the deposit money banks. In other words, the stock of foreign exchange available, for sale either to enterprises or individuals who have personal needs has not been reduced because, bureau de change, enterprises do not have access to foreign exchange. What has happened is being mentioned perhaps tangentially in the process of the discussions, is that as at this point in time, the major sources of foreign exchange to the country are not yielding, enough foreign exchange. For some of them have actually declined. The major sources of foreign exchange to the country are export of crude oil. In other words, proceeds from crude oil sales. Secondly, proceeds from non-oil export sales. Then thirdly, proceeds from capital inflows and one other source. These sources in recent times have not improved, but at the same time you find that the demand for foreign exchange is skyrocketing. Nigerians at this point in time still want to buy all kinds of goods and services from abroad, including education services, medical tourism and all that. So you find a situation like Shuaibu Idris mentioned, that the import structure or the production structure of the country is highly import dependent, and Nigerians have excessive appetite for importation of all kinds of goods and services. Under such circumstance, when foreign exchange earnings, have reduced, you find the demand for foreign exchange skyrocketing. And a major factor, in the issue of foreign exchange problem is the comatose nature of the refineries, to the extent that whatever little quantity of crude oil export that is sold abroad, as at today, maybe less than 1 million barrels per day of crude oil export out of a total production of about 1.2 million barrels against the OPEC quota of 1.72 million barrels. You find that whatever is sold by way of direct export sales, is used, as we are told by the NNPC Limited, to import, refined petroleum products. And in addition, it pays subsidies. So under the circumstance, foreign exchange accretion is virtually not there, other than from perhaps the little quantity of non-oil exports. So invariably, there is excessive demand for foreign exchange against the backdrop of very low foreign exchange earnings and low capital inflow and heightened capital flight against the backdrop of monetary policy normalization in the advanced countries, particularly the US. So invariably, like I explained before, like Professor Waleke mentioned a number of legacy factors. There are so many of them. But the question posed to me was, what is the current situation? Why is it like that? Perhaps the president of the Association of Bureau d'Exchange may be able to provide insight as to whether my investigations, which I mentioned before, that respectable Nigerians, and economic agents are now hoarding foreign exchange. They refuse to offload into the foreign exchange market. So as it were, even if the central bank resumes sale of foreign exchange to the Bureau d'Exchange, the situation will not change, for the simple reason that it was the misbehavior of the BDCs that led to the suspension in the first place.
Mike Abada, thank you very much. We're indeed bringing in now Dr. Aminu Gwadabe into the conversation. You see him there in our Lagos Network Center. And earlier, let's apologize to Shuaibu Idris while you were still in flight. Excuse me, we lost the audio connection through our satellite uplink, but we understand that that's been cleared up. And so we're coming back to you, gentlemen, in our Lagos Network Center. Dr. Aminu Gwadabe, well, the Bureau d'Exchange operators have also been blamed for the current speculative attacks on the Naira. What exactly is happening? Are people just mopping up the Naira? Are your members also hoarding? Or are you going to have another set of primaries and they are preparing to mop up dollars so that they will give to delegates?
Okay. Good morning, Kingsley, Mr. Creole, and the panelists. I want to borrow your permission, Mr. Kingsley, for protection, because already I find myself in the midst of my regulators. I will not be talking as a pure economist. I'll be talking as a field man. And I thank Prof for asking me about his investigation. First, let us state the problem. I think it's only when we state the problem that we can even provide solution. I use the root causes analysis, the RAC, by defining the problem. The problem is an intensity of ostentatious psychological preference of a foreign currency over a local currency, both by individual and corporate bodies. And what is the reason? Simply put, O defined as dollarization, currency substitution. Some of the speakers have said part of this reason in terms of our sources of supply, which starts with oil exports, non-oil exports, portfolio investment, foreign direct investment. The one that I have not had so far, which is the hanging fruit, is the remittances inflow that my association is advocating. As we speak, downward spiral is a self-inflicting phenomenon. Panic buying today reduces the value of the dollar, thereby also enhancing panic buying tomorrow. Put this together, the trajectory will now be a lost confidence in the currency. And once people lose confidence in their local currency, the behavior is natural We are economists here. It's natural. It's about value. You will not want to stay in a position where inflation rate of about 20% is deepening into the value of your asset you want to hedge against. We see people now even dropping their cryptocurrency, going into the US bonds because of their Fed interest rate. It's just natural. It's a phenomenon that is not limited to Nigeria, it's global. Nigeria is predicated with so many multiple exchange rates. The dominant one is the fixed exchange rate of the Apex Bank. You have the power market rate. You even now have what we call the cryptocurrency rate. So, in a situation whereby you have this confusing multiplicity of exchange rate, tell me how your currency is stable. To your next question about the generalization of criminalization of BUD change, I think it's a misnomer. BDC are also a transmission mechanism of the central bank policy direction. Let's go back to 2006. A lot of regimes practices from 1986 till 2006. Several windows were created from import licensing, second-tier foreign exchange market, whole Dutch auction system, retail Dutch auction system, until 2006. None has been effective than the window created for the BUD change to meet the gap, to close the gap between the official exchange market and the parallel exchange market. The BDCs have done that as at then, out of the wisdom of the then governor, Professor Charles Soludo, who is now the governor of the Anambra State, created that window first to formalize the activities of the BUD change, second, to give liquidity to the retail sector. The major pressure is on the retail sector. People cannot pay for school fees. People cannot travel. People cannot pay for $200 import of their spare parts, for their equipment, for their subscription, for their mortgage. When you have that pressure in that market, definitely it will be spiraling into other Ghanaian market. So it's a same phenomenon. So in that case, like I said, we look at the sources. The oil, we cannot even meet our quota, like they have all said. And what is the reason? Most of the oil companies now are even owned by Nigerians that have not even capacity. During when you have the investors there, if we are in this kind of crisis, they run back to their country and bring these dollars to invest into the economy and meet up the production. Look at the export proceeds. People buy yam in Nigeria to go to Ghana and wash it and pack it and package it and call it made in Ghana. Why? Because of the low quality of our export. 3. If you look at the 81% of investors in 3 years have left the country. Let us look at the currency substitution. Even though the statistics is not verified, it is being estimated that over $100 billion is even outside the control of the Apex Bank surveillance, under the people's pillows, under people's bed, evacuated abroad. So this is the tenacity of the issue. The hanging fruit is the remittances. I don't know if you follow the last conference of the NIDCOM, Nigerian Diaspora Commission. There were a lot of lamentations of billions of dollars inflow into this country that is not seen. And this is because of the imperfection. This is because of misalignment. This is because of monopoly. And what we are saying, that space should be broken. We are not after the FX window of the central bank. We know it's not the practice. But the practice in other clients,
Let's look at India. India faces this crisis in the 70s. They sit down, they align their foreign policy with their diasporans abroad. They call all of them to at least come in and salvage the situation. I want to say here, there is no patriotism in capitalism. While running a capitalist system, you cannot expect an individual, a rational economic individual. You have two windows where one is doing 700, one is doing 420, and you want him to come at 420. He will jump the fence. It's not possible. So we need to do something.
Dr. Aminu, indeed, we have to do something. And you started by saying that you want to state the problem. You've done that successfully. You've also brought in some hypotheses, as well as dissected the situation. But from what I can understand, it's multifaceted. It's multifaceted from, terrible industrial policy to other aspects that he has raised.
But Kira, I'm sorry, I know you want to ask a question. Try you can write on this. A number of the factors that our distinguished guests have raised, these are factors that have been with us. Whether it's poor industrialization policy, the fact import dependence, and so on and so forth, and declining proceeds from oil. We're producing around about 1.2 million barrels of oil per day. How do you explain the current predative nature against the Naira? That's just the point. What has happened? What has caused this? I mean, they say it's behavior, market behavior, irrational behavior. What is the trigger for this?
Yes, and I think also mentioned this of panic buying, and loss of confidence in the nation's.
What is the cause of that?
Exactly, and of course the multiplicity of exchange rate. Please contextualize this and let us round up this segment.
Yes, the problem has to do with this mismatch between demand and supply. I think that is clear, and it's more now because you're saying, what is the major problem, now? I think it's because we're in a penultimate election year. Much of the demand has come as a result of politicians, demanding dollars. We saw, just as Prof rightly mentioned, a surge in the demand for dollars in the parallel market, before the primaries, and the demand has, of course, continued, particularly given the fact that a lot of people now are taking, demanding this dollar more as a store of value. That's why you hear that people are now keeping dollars, under their pillow, because of the high rate of inflation, in Nigeria. Inflation has reduced the purchasing power of the Naira, so you will now naturally find people, wanting to now store their wealth, in dollar. So we have had in recent time we have had an uptake in, dollar denominated, virtual currencies, Bitcoin. We've also had uptake in, people literally going to mop up these things because of their expectation that the Naira will be devalued, the expectation that the exchange rate will further rise, which is, why, I was happy when I read that the central bank governor made it, very clear that, there is no intention to devalue the Naira, because some have, suggested that the way that the Naira is currently overvalued. And if the Naira is currently overvalued, some have said it should be around. As a matter of fact, there are people that look at the parallel market rate and say that's a reflection of the value of the Naira, because according to them, that is where you have market forces, fully at play. But I quite, disagree, because of this speculative demand that we have established. That's actually what is driving the exchange rate. I want to also say, Kinsley, that I think that what is happening now is transitory. I also think, and my optimism is based on the fact that in 2017, you recall, around February of that year, the Naira rose to as high as 520 Naira in the parallel market.
That's right.
Yes. By April, when the central bank introduced the I&E window of 2017, we saw a convergence of rates. The parallel market rate crashed. Okay, we saw convergence of rates between the official and the parallel market rate to about 357. And part of why I think that this is transitory and that is, it can be contained, in the near future, is because the central bank, unlike in the past, today has relatively sufficient reserves, external reserves, for intervention.
Okay, well,
Yes.
Professor Ochoa, thanks a lot. Let's get the closing thoughts from Shuaibu Idris. We're pressed for time. We know that this is a subject matter we'll have to return to further interrogate, more particularly in terms of suggestions. I like the issue you raised, Uche Waleke, about what happened 5 years ago. At some point, I'm sure persons who thought it was a joke, they were circulating on the social media. They had a photograph of a 500 naira note, and then they had a photograph of a one US dollar note. I was saying that this is the correct exchange rate. Now, I don't know how they're going to work that out. Now it's about 700 and something. But Shuaibu Idris, those who made Forex are unable to get it. Aviation sector, for instance. The aviation sector is in crisis. They say they're not able to get their Forex needs. Some of them are even going to the parallel market to go and source for Forex and all kinds of things that do not just seem to be in place. Some experts had also argued that there's little that the central bank through its monetary policy measures can do to have a fix. What is the way forward in bullet points?
Kingsley, straight to the point, 2-3 issues the central bank has done, which has inadvertently contributed to where we are today. Number one, the intervention by the central bank by giving out enormous amount of loans, close to about 2-3 trillion naira. Most of those loans were given to quote-unquote people who do not deserve to be given those loans. These loans were used to buy ostentatious consumption items, and quite a number of these loans are already bad. Whoever buys a basket knows that that basket will throw water, and there is need for the central bank to have everything. We have Bank of Industry, we have Bank of Agriculture, we have Infrastructure Development Bank, we have this, we have that. Why is the central bank intervening directly? This is causing an expansion monetary policy, and so much money is being pumped into the system. Number two, the NFIU, the Nigerian Financial Intelligence Unit, is biting a little harder, and therefore corrupt officials who have stolen our money, they have so much naira, they don't know what to do with it, and they cannot take it into the system. What do? They demand for dollars. So, Professor Mark Obaden, it is not just the hoarding, but also there is massive demand from corrupt officials who have the penchant to steal our money and then, keep them in dollars. Last but not the least is the issue of the real exchange rate misalignment. Professor Obaden, I beg you in the name of God to take a critical look, you and your committee, to take a critical look on the real exchange rate situation in Nigeria and look at the possibility of having some level of alignment. We are running a crawling peg exchange rate regime, and we are not crawling as much as we should be crawling. Depreciation of the value of the naira, if you index it with inflation at 18%, where should the exchange rate be? Should it be at 420 naira? Should it be at 500 naira per dollar? If you don't align it well, why wouldn't exporters of non-oil items hold their dollars? The price is not right, why should I sell? So I think we need to look at these things holistically so that we might be able to have some solution. I just pray that they are listening. Like I did say, it is just not so much worthwhile to come.
Shuaibu Idris, thank you. Thank you so much indeed. They're listening, you have made your point, and they're very valid. And at this point, I'd like to thank you, as my colleague Kingsley said earlier on, we could have a second round of this conversation in the nearest future. But for now, let's appreciate all of you for being here this morning. Shuaibu Idris, a financial expert and the MD and CEO of Timeline Consult Limited. Oh, thank you. I also like to appreciate Aminu Gwalabe, President, Association of Bureau de Change Operators of Nigeria, APCON, both of them from the Lagos studios. And now let's also thank immensely to Professor Michael Baden, member of the CBN Monetary Policy Committee. Thank you, sir, for reaching us from Benin. And of course, our own Professor Uche Waleke, President, Association of Capital Market Academics and Professor of Capital Market at the Nasarawa State University. It's been a pleasure talking to you this morning.